The message showed up on my phone at 10 o'clock at night. Just 9 words. Don't come this weekend. It's too much trouble. I read those words again and again while I stood by my truck with a birthday bag already packed. One day later, I was parked outside my daughter-in-law's building, holding a toy nobody wanted anymore, and a man I had never met was calling my phone to say, "Sir, you need to come inside right now." I did not know yet that those words would change everything for the next 2 weeks. My name is Frank Doyle. Most people call me Big Frank. I am 68 years old, and I spent almost 40 years building houses and barns all over Licking County, Ohio. I always believed that if you kept showing up for your family and you kept your promises, then love would take care of the rest. I found out that was only half true. Showing up matters, but showing up is not enough when someone is working very hard behind a closed door to keep you from seeing the truth. This is one of those stories I will remember for the rest of my life. The kind that wakes you up at 3 in the morning. But let me start from the beginning because none of this will make sense yet. My wife, Margaret, passed away 3 years ago this spring. Her heart gave out one quiet Tuesday morning while she was watering her tomato plants. 41 years of marriage ended just like that, on our back porch, with the garden hose still running. I will not talk too much about her because this story is not really hers. But I need you to know that losing her changed something inside me. I had one son left in this world who mattered to me the way she did. His name is Ryan. Ryan is 32. He was always a gentle boy, quiet, kind, and never one to make waves, which I used to think was a good thing, until I learned it could also be dangerous. He works as a school data manager, and 3 years ago his job moved him from our small town to Cincinnati, almost 2 hours south. He married a woman named Vanessa about a year after the move. I liked her at first. She was cheerful, always smiling, always had a nice thing to say. Margaret would have said she was all sparkle and no substance. Margaret used to say things like that before she really knew someone, and sometimes she was wrong. This time she was not. Ryan and Vanessa had my grandson, Milo, 2 years ago this coming winter. I drove down for the birth and sat in that hospital waiting room for almost 10 hours, drinking coffee that tasted like hot water. When it finally let me hold him, 6 pounds of pure noise and fists, something inside my chest that had gone quiet since Margaret died woke back up. People sometimes ask me now if I regret loving that boy so much, knowing everything that happened later. I do not. Not for one single second. The love was real before any of the rest started. That is what made everything hurt so much. For the first year, I drove down to Cincinnati almost every other weekend. 2 hours down the highway, past the cornfields, radio playing whatever station would still come in that far south. I always brought something small for Milo. A wooden puzzle, a stuffed dog, little things. Vanessa used to call it Grandpa Frank's Surprise Day, and she would take pictures and send them to me with smiley faces. Ryan would walk me out to my truck when I left and say, "Thanks for coming, Dad. It means a lot to us. I want you to hold on to that memory because it matters for what comes later." About a year and a half ago, something started to change. Small things at first. I would call on Sunday, which had always been our time to talk, and Ryan would not pick up. He would text back later saying he was busy. Busy would turn into the next day and the day after that. I told myself he was a young father with a full plate. But then the visits started slipping too. Vanessa would text me the week before saying Milo had a fever, or they had plans with their side of the family, or the apartment was a mess and maybe I should come another time. I did not know it yet, but I was being pushed away slowly, quietly, one small step at a time, the way you turn a dial so nobody notices it moving. I mentioned it to my sister, Ruthie, who lives 20 minutes from me. Ruthie is 72, sharp as a tack, and does not have much patience for foolishness. She told me over pancakes at her favorite diner, "Frank, when a young wife starts deciding when a grandfather gets to see his own grandbaby, that is not about a busy schedule. That is about control. Mark my words." I told her she was overreacting. She told me to check back with her in 6 months and tell her she was wrong. I never got the chance because 6 months later, I was sitting outside Vanessa's apartment building, holding a wrapped gift with a 4-year-old's name on it, and a stranger was calling to tell me to come upstairs. Let me walk you through that day slowly because I have gone over it in my head more times than I can count, and I want to get it exactly right. It was a Friday in September. Milo's birthday party was set for that Sunday, but I had asked Ryan 2 weeks before if I could come down early, just to spend a quiet afternoon with my grandson before the party got loud and busy. Ryan said, "Sure, Dad. Come Friday. We can order pizza." I bought Milo a little wooden fire truck from a shop near my house. Hand-painted, no batteries needed, the kind of toy that lasts. I wrapped it myself, badly, the way a man who spent his life with hammers and nails wraps things. I packed a small bag because Ryan had said I could sleep on their pull-out couch. I left my house at 10 in the morning, drove 2 hours down, stopped once for gas and a coffee, and pulled into the parking lot of the Maple Grove apartments right around noon. I remember it was warm out, sun shining, birds in the trees near the parking lot. I remember sitting in my truck for a second, looking at the little wrapped fire truck on the seat beside me, feeling that warm, happy feeling you get right before you see a face that lights up when it sees yours. My phone buzzed at 12:15. It was Vanessa. "Please don't come today. Ryan isn't feeling great, and honestly, Frank, it's too much trouble right now. We need some space. I'll let you know about the party." Frank, not Dad, not even a nickname. Just Frank, like I was a stranger dropping off package. I sat there in that parking lot with the engine running, and I read that message maybe 5 times. Same as I had read the one from the night before. Then I did something I'm not proud of, and I will not pretend otherwise. I did not drive away. I stayed parked right there. I want to tell you why, honestly. It was not stubbornness, not really. Something about the words felt wrong. Too much trouble right now. Not too busy, not we have plans, but too much trouble, like I was a weight being measured against something else. And Ryan not feeling well was strange too, because 2 days earlier he had sent me a picture of Milo eating a popsicle on their little balcony, both of them smiling, everything looking just fine. Something did not add up. The same something Ruthie had been warning me about at that diner table for months. So I sat in that parking lot for almost 40 minutes. I did not know it yet, but that turned out to be the smartest thing I did all day, because at 1 o'clock, a man I had never met called my cell phone. "Mr. Doyle, this is Gary Whitfield. I manage the Maple Grove property. I got your number off the emergency paperwork for Unit 109. I need you to come inside." I felt my whole chest turn cold, the way it does when you already know something bad before anyone says it out loud. "Is my son okay?" There was a pause, the kind of pause a good man gives you before saying something hard. "I think you should just come up, sir. Unit 109. I'll meet you at the door." I left that little fire truck on the seat. I did not lock the truck. I do not remember walking from the parking lot to the building. I do not remember the stairs. I only remember that by the time I reached the second floor, my legs were moving faster than they had in years. And a woman I did not know, maybe in her 60s, was standing outside the next apartment with her arms crossed and a look on her face that was part relief and part fury. "You're the grandfather. Thank goodness. I've been trying to get someone here for 4 days. For days. I want you to hold on to that number because everything after this built on top of it. Welcome back to Daddy's Revenge. If this is your first time here, get comfortable because this story gets heavier before it gets better. And if you have watched our other stories, you already know what to do. Hit that subscribe button because you'll want to see how this family made it through. Leave a comment and tell me where you are watching from tonight. Now back to that hallway. Gary Whitfield met me at the door with a master key already in his hand and a look on his face like he had practiced what he was about to say and still did not want to say it. "Sir, I want to be honest before we go in. Your son's neighbor, Mrs. Delgado, called us 3 days ago. She said she had not seen your son leave for work, had not heard the baby, and the mail was piling up. We knocked twice, nobody answered, and by law, I cannot force the door open without a police check or permission from someone on the lease. That's you. I've been trying every number I had for you since Tuesday. I had not gotten a single call. I checked later. Every call Gary Whitfield made had gone to a number that rang twice and disconnected, which told me later, once I understood everything, that somebody had been quietly blocking what reached me. He opened the door. The apartment was dark, curtains closed in the middle of the day, and it smelled like nobody had opened a window in a long time. I called out for Ryan. Nothing. I called for Milo, and that silence was the worst sound I have ever heard. I found my son on the kitchen floor of that apartment, awake but barely, leaning against the cabinets, soaked in sweat, an empty water bottle beside him, and his phone completely dead. Ryan has a heart condition called an arrhythmia. He has managed it well since he was a teenager, takes his medicine every morning, always has. But a man alone for 4 days, unable to reach his pills properly because, as I found out within the hour, his medicine bag had been packed into a suitcase that was not his, sitting by the front door, ready to go somewhere he did not know about. I got down on that kitchen floor with my son away. I had not held him since he was small enough to sit on my shoulders at the county fair, and I called for help with a hand that would not stop shaking. Gary Whitfield was already on his phone too, and Mrs. Delgado, bless that woman, went and got a cool towel and a glass of water without anyone asking her, because as she told me later, you do not wait to be told what a sick man needs. Ryan was weak, dizzy, his heart racing too fast, confused enough that when the paramedics asked him what day it was, he could not answer. The lead paramedic, a man named Officer Boyd, looked at me after they got him stable and said, "Sir, if we had found him even 6 hours later, this could have gone very differently. I want you to sit with that sentence the way I had to. Very differently. That is the kind of sentence that changes a man forever." And Milo, my grandson, was not in that apartment. Not with Ryan. Nowhere to be found. I asked Gary Whitfield where the child was, and he said he had only seen Vanessa's car in the lot once in the last 4 days, and that Mrs. Delgado had mentioned seeing Vanessa loading a rented van over the weekend. A car seat, boxes, suitcases, while Ryan, according to what Mrs. Delgado heard through the thin wall, had been asking her in a raised voice where she thought she was taking their son. I want to be honest about how I felt in that moment. Riding in the ambulance, holding my son's hand, not knowing where my 4-year-old grandson was, not knowing if my daughter-in-law had simply left or had taken him somewhere I would never find him. I have run a business, buried a wife, and built a life out of staying calm under pressure. That afternoon, for the first time since Margaret's funeral, I did not feel calm at all. I felt like the ground had opened up under me. They took Ryan to Good Shepherd Hospital, the same one where Milo was born. By 7 that evening, his numbers had settled enough for the doctor, a kind woman named Dr. Nash, to tell me he would be okay, that he needed rest and monitoring overnight, but the danger had passed. I sat in a plastic chair beside his bed and watched him sleep. Around 9, he woke up just enough to look at me and say 4 words that told me everything about what the last few months had really been. "Dad, she took him." I did not sleep that night. I sat in that hospital chair until the sun came up, and somewhere around midnight, I called the one person in this world I trusted to help me think clearly. Sam Reyes and I have been friends since 1985, back when he was a young police officer and I was building the addition on the old station house downtown. Sam retired 10 years ago, but he never really stopped being a detective in his head. I called him at midnight and told him everything. The canceled visit, the landlord's call, the 4 days nobody could reach us, my son on that kitchen floor, my grandson nowhere in sight. Sam was quiet for a long moment, the way he used to get right, before telling you something you needed to hear whether you wanted to or not. "Frank," he said, "this did not happen in 4 days. Something has been building for a long time. You said the visits started slowing down about 1.5 years ago. That is when it started. Whatever this is, she has been planning it for a while. I want you to do one thing before anything else. Do not confront anybody. Do not post anything online. Do not call her family. Do not tip your hand. You get your son stable, and let me start quietly pulling threads. Can you do that for me?" I told him I could, even though every part of me wanted to march straight to wherever Vanessa was and demand to know where my grandson had gone. But almost 40 years of running a business had taught me the same lesson Sam was teaching me now. The person who reacts first usually loses. The person who gathers all the facts first usually wins. By 9 the next morning, with Ryan resting and a nurse named Louise promising to call me the second anything changed, Sam was already at the Maple Grove Apartments talking to Gary Whitfield, and more importantly, to Mrs. Delgado, who turned out to be one of the most important people in this entire story. I want to give her the credit she deserves, because without her, I do not know that my son would still be alive. Carla Delgado was 66 years old, a retired librarian who had lived in the next apartment for 9 years and had, in her own words, watched Milo grow from a stroller baby to a little boy who waved at her through the courtyard fence every single morning. She told Sam, and later told me herself over tea at her kitchen table, that over the past 6 months she had watched something turn sour next door. Raised voices at night. Vanessa leaving for hours, sometimes overnight, with Milo in tow. No explanation to anyone. Ryan looking thinner, quieter, sometimes with his curtains shut in the middle of the day like a man who did not want anyone looking in. I tried calling that boy's father 3 times over the last 2 months, Carla told me, her hand resting flat on the table like she was steadying herself just from remembering it. Every time it went to a number that did not work right. I did not know it then, but I know now somebody did not want that call getting through. That single detail became the thread Sam pulled hardest on, because it meant this was not chaos. It was planned. Sam spent 4 days working through everything he still had access to as a retired officer with old friends who owed him favors, plus what any determined man with a laptop and a library card can dig up if he knows where to look. What he found, laid out across my kitchen table on Saturday afternoon while Ryan slept upstairs in his old childhood room, changed everything I thought I understood about my daughter-in-law. Vanessa had lost her job as an office coordinator 14 months earlier. She never told Ryan. For over a year, she had been leaving the apartment every weekday morning dressed for a job she no longer had, driving to a coffee shop across town, and spending her days there while collecting unemployment money sent to a post office box she had rented under a different name 3 towns over, so the paperwork would never show up at their apartment. Ryan had been giving her half of every paycheck for what he believed was their household budget: rent, groceries, and Milo's daycare. Sam's research, cross-referenced with bank statements Ryan later gave permission for us to look at, showed that almost $28,000 over 14 months had gone somewhere other than a household. Some of it went to credit cards Ryan never knew existed, cards that had paid for regular weekend trips to Chicago that Vanessa told Ryan were work training sessions, except she had not had a job in over a year. Those Chicago trips, it turned out, were to see a man named Derek Voss, someone Vanessa had known long before she ever met my son. A relationship Sam traced through phone records Ryan still had legal access to as the joint account holder. And that suitcase by the front door, the one packed with Ryan's heart medicine mixed in with Milo's clothes? Vanessa had been planning to leave for Chicago for good. Not with Ryan's blessing, not with any custody agreement, with Milo on a Sunday, while Ryan was recovering or not recovering from whatever happened after she had, according to what Carla Delgado overheard through that shared wall, deliberately waited to call for help when she found him struggling that Monday night, choosing instead to keep loading the van and leaving him there. I want to be careful here because I know how a story like this can start to sound too planned to be true, but Sam found the receipts. Literally, a moving van reservation for that very Sunday morning, the same day as Milo's planned birthday party. Destination, Chicago, Illinois. A lease application already turned in under Vanessa's name alone for a 2-bedroom apartment 9 minutes from Derek Voss's address. And an email, printed out and placed in the folder Sam handed me, sent from Vanessa's account to her cousin 8 days before I ever got that message canceling my visit. Once I'm out of Cincinnati, this is going to be so much cleaner. Ryan will fight for a while, but he'll get tired. His dad is the real problem. He won't let this go easy. I need him out of the way until we're already gone. I need him out of the way. That was me. 9 words in a text message calling me too much trouble were never really about a Friday afternoon visit. They were about keeping the one person paying close attention out of the room when everything fell apart. Here is where I want to pause and tell you something honestly. Right up until Sam showed me those printouts, some small, stubborn part of me was still hoping this was a misunderstanding. That Vanessa was overwhelmed, going through something private, and that I had overreacted. I think most of us hold on to that hope longer than we should, because the alternative is admitting that someone you welcomed into your family, someone you drove 2 hours to see, was capable of watching your son struggle and deciding whether it was convenient to help him. That hope ended the moment I read that email. Ryan read it too. Sitting at my kitchen table 8 days after I found him on that kitchen floor, color back in his cheeks, heart rate steady, a folder of his wife's secrets spread out in front of him like a verdict. He did not cry right away. He sat very still, the way I remember sitting still the day the doctor told us about Margaret's heart. That particular stillness that comes right before a man's whole understanding of his life gets rewritten. She left me there, he said finally, quiet, almost himself. She was already loading the van. She heard me. Carla heard everything through the wall. She just left. I put my hand on my son's shoulder, and I did not say anything because there was nothing that would make that truth any smaller. But I want to tell you about Milo, because that is the part that mattered most, and I do not want you sitting through this whole story worried about that little boy without an answer. Vanessa had not actually taken him to Chicago that Sunday. Gary Whitfield's welfare call and my unplanned arrival had thrown off her whole timeline. When Sam and I, working with a family lawyer named Patricia Owens downtown, filed for emergency custody the following Monday based on documented abandonment and danger to a child, the court granted Ryan full temporary custody within 72 hours, moved quickly because of the medical emergency and Carla Delgado's sworn statement about what she had witnessed. Milo, it turned out, had been staying with Vanessa's sister across town the entire time, safe, fed, and cared for, but kept away from his father on purpose while the escape plan finished coming together. I drove to that house myself the day the court order came through, Patricia Owens' assistant beside me with the paperwork in a folder on her lap. And when that front door opened and I saw my grandson's face, still round with baby cheeks, still missing one front tooth from a fall off the swing set that summer, I did something I had not done in public since Margaret's funeral. I knelt right there on the porch steps, and I held that boy, and I cried, and I did not care who saw me. "Grandpa Frank," he said into my shoulder, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world, like none of the last 2 weeks had happened to him at all. "Did you bring the fire truck?" I had. It was still in my truck, still wrapped in that badly folded paper. And I gave it to him right there in that driveway, and for about 30 seconds, none of the rest of it mattered. Now I promise you a happy ending. And here it is, because a story like this is not worth telling if it is only about what someone loses. Carla Delgado is the reason my son is alive today. Not a doctor, not a lawyer, not me, a 66-year-old retired librarian who noticed a light not turning on and mail piling up, who tried 4 times to reach a phone number that had been quietly blocked, who finally, on the 4th day, walked down to the leasing office herself and refused to leave until Gary Whitfield promised to do something about it. When I asked her weeks later why she went to so much trouble for a neighbor she was not even close friends with, she looked at me like the question surprised her. "Because that is just what you do," she said. "You do not wait for it to be somebody else's job." I paid off the rest of Carla Delgado's car loan without telling her first, found the balance through her credit union, called them directly, and paid it in full, just over $900. When she called me crying, asking why, I told her the truth. "You gave my son his life back. The least I can do is take away one bill." I also started a small scholarship fund in Margaret's name at the community college near Cincinnati, where Carla's grandson was starting his first year that fall. $2,000 a semester for as long as he stays enrolled. Some things you cannot pay back with money, but you can at least try. And trying, it turns out, matters more than most people think. As for Vanessa, the custody hearing that followed was not close at all. Patricia Owens laid out the financial records, the unemployment fraud, the hidden accounts, the Chicago trips, the sworn statement from Carla about the night Ryan collapsed, and the email that spoke for itself better than any lawyer ever could. The judge granted Ryan primary custody, with supervised visits only for Vanessa, and only after she completed financial counseling and a full evaluation. Vanessa moved to Chicago with Derek Voss about a month after the hearing. As far as I know, she sees Milo 4 days a month, always supervised, always through a court-appointed helper, because the judge did not take lightly a mother who packed a moving van and left a sick man on the floor rather than slow down her own plans. I take no joy in saying that plainly, but I do not apologize for it either, because a 4-year-old boy needed somebody in that courtroom telling the truth for him, and I am glad it was us. Ryan moved back closer to home that winter, not in my house. He wanted his own place, and I respected that, but into a small rental just 10 minutes from mine. Close enough that Milo can ride his bike to my driveway once he is old enough. Close enough that Sunday dinners are not something we have to plan around excuses anymore. Ryan's school district let him transfer back without any trouble, which tells you something about the kind of worker my son has always been. Even during the year he was quietly falling apart at home while nobody at that office ever knew. I asked him once, a few months after everything settled, whether he regretted marrying Vanessa in the first place, whether if he could go back, he would have seen it coming the way Ruthie claimed she had at that diner table. He thought about it for a long time before answering. I did not think I could have seen all of it, he said. But I think somewhere inside, I knew something was wrong, and I kept telling myself it was just normal married life because I did not want to be the kind of man who gives up. I think that is what she was counting on, that I would rather be unhappy than admit I was wrong. I told him that is not weakness, that is just what love does to good men sometimes. It makes them patient with things that never deserve their patience. And then I told him what I think is maybe the truest thing I have learned in 68 years on this earth. Love is not proven by how much trouble you are willing to put up with from someone. It is proven by who shows up when the real trouble finally arrives, and who is already halfway out the door with the van loaded before anybody even asks them to help. I think about that message sometimes. Too much trouble. 9 words meant to keep me 2 hours away on a Friday afternoon, so nobody would notice the exit already in motion. I think about how close it came to working, how if I had simply driven away from that parking lot the way any hurt, reasonable man might have, this story ends very differently. I did not let myself finish that thought all the way because I did not have to. It did not end that way. I sat in that parking lot for 40 extra minutes because something in my gut told me the words were wrong. And Gary Whitfield's call came through at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And my son is alive. And my grandson rides his bike down my street most weekends now, training wheels getting looser every month, which Ryan says means we will need to take them off soon. Milo turned 5 this past winter. We had the party at my house this time, right in the backyard. String lights up along the fence the way Margaret always liked them for birthdays. Carla Delgado drove up from Cincinnati for it, 2 hours each way, because I asked her to, and because, in her words, I was not about to miss the party I helped make happen. Ryan grilled hot dogs. Ruthie brought a cake from the bakery downtown that Margaret used to love. Milo ran around that yard in a paper crown until 9 at night. And at one point, he climbed up onto my lap on the porch swing, sticky with frosting, and fell asleep right there, the way small children do when they finally run themselves all the way out. I sat on that swing a long time after everyone else had gone quiet. My grandson's weight settled against my chest, the porch light glowing soft and yellow across the yard, and I thought about a parking lot in Cincinnati and a text message calling me too much trouble. And I thought if being too much trouble means you're the one who stays, the one who drives 2 hours on a hunch, the one who sits in a car 40 extra minutes, because something feels wrong, then I hope I stay exactly the kind of trouble for every single day I've got left in me. Because trouble like that, it turns out, is just another word for love that refuses to look away. If you made it this far, I hope this story reminded you of somebody in your own life who showed up when it mattered. Or maybe it reminded you to be that person for somebody else. If you enjoyed this one, hit that like button, drop a comment, and tell me where you are watching from tonight. And do not forget to subscribe to Daddy's Revenge so you never miss the next one. Thank you for spending this time with me. I will see you in the next story.